Hello everyone. This is our third lecture, and today in this lecture we will study about corporate governance. That what actually corporate governance is. So here we are with corporate governance. We are going to start with the definition of corporate governance. Corporate governance has also been more narrowly defined as a system of law and sound approaches by which corporations are directed and controlled, focusing on an internal and external corporate structure with the intention of monitoring the action of management and directions, and hereby mitigating agency risks with may stem from the mid misdeeds of corporate officers. On source defines corporate governance as the set of conditions that shapes the expo- exposed bargaining over the quasi-rents generated by a firm. The firm itself is modeled as a governance structure acting through the mechanism of contract. Here, corporate governance may include its relation to corporate finance. Coming towards the next slide, here we are going to study the principles of corporate governance. Contemporary discussion of corporate governance tends to refer the principle raised in three documents released since 1990: the Cadbury Report (UK, 1992), the Principles of Corporate Governance (OECD, 1999 to 2004 and 2015), the Act of 2002 (US 2002), the Cadbury, an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) report, presents general principles around which businesses are expected to operate to assure proper governance. Informally refers to Starbucks or SOS or SOS is an attempt by federal government in the United States of legislate several several of the principles recommended in Cadbury and OECD reports. Rights and equitable treatment of stakeholders. Organizations should respect the rights of stakeholders and help stakeholders to exercise those rights. They can help they can help shareholders exercise their rights by openly and effectively communicating information and by encouraging stakeholders to participate in general meetings. Interests and other stakeholders. Organizations should recognize that they have legal, contractual, social, and market driven obligation to non-stakeholders. Stakeholders including employees, investors, creditors, suppliers, local communities, customers, and policymakers. Role and responsibilities of roles and responsibilities of a board. The board needs sufficient relevant skills and understanding to review and challenge management performance. It is also it also needs adequate size and appropriate level of independence and commitment, integrity and ethical behavior. Integrity should be a fundamental requirement in choosing corporate officers and board members. Organizations should develop a code of conduct for other directors and executives that put ethical and responsible decision making, disclosure, and transparency. Organizations should clarify and make publicly known the role and responsibilities of board and management to prove stakeholders that a level of accountability. They should also implement procedures to independently verify a safeguard integrity of a company's financial reporting. Disclosure of material matters concerning the organization should be timely and balanced to ensure that all investors have access to clear factual information. The next slide, and here we are going to study the models. Different models of corporate governance differ accordingly differ according to the variety of capitalization in which they are embedded. The Anglo-American model tends to emphasize the interest of stakeholders. The coordinated or multi-stakeholder model associated with continental Europe and Japan and also recognizes the interests of workers, managers, suppliers, customers, and the community. A related distinction is between market-oriented and network-oriented models of corporate governance. Continental Europe. Some European countries, including Germany, Austria, and Netherlands, require a two-tiered board of directors as a means of improving corporate governance. In the tiered board, the executive board, made up of company executives and generally runs day-to-day operation, while the supervisory board, made up entirely of non-executive directors who represent shareholders and employees, hires and fires the members of executive board and determine their compensation and review major business decisions. India. The Security and Exchange Board of India Committee on Corporate Governance and define corporate governance as the acceptance by management of inalienable rights of stakeholders as a true owner of the corporation and of their own role as trustees on behalf of stakeholders. It is about commitment to value, about ethical business should conduct, and about making a distinction between personal and corporate funds in management of company. US, United States, and United Kingdom. The so-called analog American model of corporate governance emphasizes on the interest of stakeholders. It relies on a single tied board of direction and is normally dominated by non-executive directors elected by stakeholders. Because of this, it is also known as the unitary system. Within this system, many board includes some executives from the company who are ex officio members of the board. Non-executive directors are accepted to to outnumber executive directors and hold key posts, including audit and compensation committees. In United Kingdom, the CEO generally does not also serve as chairman of board, whereas in US having the dual role is the norm despite major regarding the impact on corporate governance. In United States, corporations are directly governed by state laws, while the exchange, offering and offering and trading of securities in corporation, including shares, is governed by federal legislation. Many US states have adopted the Model Business Corporation Act, but the dominant state law of publicly traded corporation is Delaware, which continues to be the place of incorporation for majority of publicity trade corporation. Individual rules for corporation are based upon the chart, corporate charter and less authoritative. The corporate bylaws shareholders can initiate changes in corporate charters, although they can initiate changes to corporate bylaw. Regulation. Corporations are created as a legal person by the law and regulation of a particular jurisdic- jurisdiction. jurisdiction. They may vary in many respects between countries, but a corporation's legal person status in fundamental to all of the conferences by salute. This allows the entity to hold property in its own right without reference to any particular real person. It also results in it also results in pre pre prep perpetual existence that characterize the modern corporation. The authority granting of corporate assistance may arise from general purpose legislation, which is in the general case or a form of solid to create a specific corporation, which has the only method prior in 19th century. In addition to the statutory law of relevant jurisdiction, Corporations are subject to common law in some countries and various laws and regulations affecting business practices. In some judiciaries, corporations also have a constitution that provides individual rules that governs the corporation and authorities or or constrains its decision makers. This constitution is defined by a variety of terms. In English speaking judiciary, it is usually known as corporate charters or the corporate charters and articles of association. The capacity of stakeholders to modify the constitution of their corporation can vary sustainably. The US passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act (FCPA) in 1977. This law made it illegal to bribe government officials and require corporations to maintain adequate accounting controls. It enforced by US Department to Justice and Securities and Exchange Committees. Substantial civil and criminal penalties have been levied on corporations and executives convic- convicted of bribery. The UK passed the Bribery Act in 2010. This law is made This law made it illegal to bribe either government or private citizens to make facilitating payments. Government officials to perform their routine duties. It also requires corporations to establish, control, or prevent bribery. Codes and guidelines. Corporate governance principles and codes have been developed in different countries and issued from stock exchange. Corporations, institutional investors, or associations of directors and managers with the support of government and international organizations as a rule. Compliance with these governance recommendations is not mandated by law, although the codes linked to stock exchange listing requirements may have a coefficient effect.